Call this meeting to order. Welcome here, everyone. And at this time, I'd like to give the opening to Councillor Jake Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 weeks ago, Councillor Bill Hiebert spoke about Remembrance Day, its origin and significance. With his permission, I would like to piggyback on it, speaking about it more from a personal perspective and what experience was like for me. Growing up, I don't remember much being said about Remembrance Day. I knew that my father, underage, lied about his age and joined the army, serving briefly in Churchill. In elementary and high school, I realized we had lectures on the significance of the First and Second World War, especially having Mr. Jake Epp for my history teacher. Beyond that, I am drawing a blank. In the early 70s, while working and living in Winnipeg, it seemed I was oblivious to Remembrance Day celebrations. Then in 1974, it took a whole new meaning for me. Then, while stationed in Kelowna, the officer in charge of Kelowna Detachment insisted everybody be on parade. I think there must have been closer to 40 RCMP members there. I do remember it was cold, and I even think it was snowing. The RCMP, being a paramilitary organization, is represented and participates at most, if not all, Remembrance Day parades. The following year, while in Sicamous, BC, I again attended ceremonies with the other 2 or 3 members stationed there. After a lunch at the Legion, we sat around with the World War veterans, and they seemed to live vicariously through us young Mounties. They remembered their youth and how they had been so gung-ho in the military, as gung-ho as I was now as a young Mountie. It was difficult to buy my own drinks, as these dedicated veterans looked after that. I think it was near midnight when I finally left the conversation, having gained a complete new perspective as to the dedication and bravery of these Army, Navy, and Air Force veterans. Being transferred to plainclothes in Vancouver and due to grooming guidelines, I was unable to attend functions for several years. Upon subsequent transfers to Fort Capel, Saskatchewan, Halifax, Nova Scotia, my love for World War veterans and the significance of that special day was rekindled. Then in the PAW, my eldest 2 sons joined the Air Squadron, the Air Cadet Squadron, and how proud I was to see them in uniform. A couple of days ago, my 10-year-old grandson asked me how old he was supposed to be before he could join the cadets. When in the forensic section in Winnipeg, I made it a point of joining the members here in Steinbach for Remembrance Day. I enjoyed lunchtime and the camaraderie at the Legion, again reminiscing with their veterans that were still able to attend. I learned about the many about the many Mennonites that joined the forces. At one time, I was under the impression that all Mennonites had been conscientious objectors. I knew my grandfather from the Zuderman side was a CO, having seen pictures of him in a Red Cross uniform. It was often said that I resembled him. Having moved to Steinbach, my 3 sons joined the Air Cadet Squadron at Windsor Park in Winnipeg. Several years later, Ashton joined the Army Reserves and served for several years. My eldest 2 sons joined different police forces. When taking over Steinbach Detachment, I had the opportunity to join the celebrations as well as being on the parade commander and marching with some of the veterans, military personnel presently serving, and many of the Navy cadets from the St. Anne Squadron, marching to the cenotaph and depositing the poppies. I missed not having lunchtime after and meeting the World War veterans, still being able to attend. 2 weeks ago, I again attended the Remembrance Day ceremonies as part of at the Pat Porter Centre. Unfortunately, there were only 2 of us in RCMP dress uniform. However, I was excited to see and observe 50 Navy cadets present. Their pride was evident, proud of being a cadet as reflected in their dress and deportment. Their participation in the ceremony, including the precision of the colour party, was heartwarming. I then had flashbacks to Sicamous in 1975, when those World War veterans spoke of their military days, of being in the prime of their lives and serving their country. Sitting there during the ceremony and watching the Navy cadets, I quickly realized I now am a veteran, watching and admiring the young cadets, observing their commitment to serving their squadron, and for many of them hopefully choosing their career as a member of the Canadian military. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiebert. Council, we have the agenda in front of us. Just before we adopt, I'd like to make a change at an item under other business. So we'll make a 13A, silo silica, and the response. So, once we've done that, looking for a motion to adopt. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. Any comment?
No comment.
Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Council, we have the minutes of November 4th, 2025, the organizational meeting. It's on page 1. We've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Schweitzer, second by Councillor Hiebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We also have the minutes of November 4th, 2025. This is the regular council meeting, starting on page 4. Again, we've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Hiebert.
Call further.
Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Council, are there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none. We are at 7:35, so we'll go directly into the public hearing. At this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. We'll be looking at 7A, the Rezoning By-Law 2266 is referring to 635 and 641 Main Street. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rezoning bylaw number 2266, as you mentioned, for property with civic address of 635 and 641 Main Street, is being applied for by Hillside Hillside Custom. The owner of the properties are Heinrich and Edna Heinrichs. Purpose of bylaw 2266 is to rezone the subject properties from RLD residential low density to RMD residential medium density to permit a multifamily development to be constructed. Notices as are required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. With respect to the application, the properties and neighborhood are serviced with public sewer and water. The proposed development will be subject to the city's multifamily infill policy requirements. A residential structure exists on 635 Main Street, with the other lot being vacant land. The application does indicate that the existing structures on the land are to be demolished in order for the new residential development to be built. There have been 2 recent multi-unit developments completed in the neighborhood, both at 600 Main Street of 6 units and 593 Main Street of 20 units. This application is being made in conjunction with variance file 2025-32, which will be heard immediately after this public hearing. And it is recommended that Council approve second reading to bylaw 2266, subject to a development agreement.
Thank you. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak? Okay. Let's take the podium, state your name and address.
Sure. My name is Terry Thiessen. My personal address, 72 Norwood Bay. I would be, that's Mitchell, Manitoba. I'd be representing the applicant. My question actually would be, should I speak to this at this stage or at the variance level, as both are kind of congruent with each other? What do you suggest?
Well, we're going to be taking the rezoning first.
Sure.
Then we'll close that off, and then we'll take the variance after that.
Maybe I should speak to both.
Okay.
Rezoning, we felt, was very simple matter of fact. We looked at the property and felt a good use for it, for this community, would be to put in another multifamily project. The idea here was not to overkill the density, but it did in the end require some zoning to become multifamily. And given that, like was mentioned earlier by the city manager, there is some precedent for in the community getting some multifamily. We felt this was a natural evolution and a good way to make this subject property useful in our perspective.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. The reason that I felt that it's best to do the rezoning first, because if we don't do the rezoning, the variance is just, there's no reason to be looking at the variance either.
Understood.
Right? So that's why I thought we'd just do one and then do the second one.
I appreciate it, yeah.
Are there any questions from council? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? I see none, but I'll ask again. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Yes? Oh, you'll have to come to the podium, please, because everything's taped. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where the mic is, so you'll have to state your name and address as well.
My name is Charlene Solnick. I live at 630 Wilson Street, which is immediately behind the vacant property. And I'm not sure if this is the kind of question you want at this point.
Okay.
And I think as a resident who's moved from Winnipeg looking for a quieter place to live, I'm just somewhat concerned about lighting, where the lighting will be, and asking that it could point down, not across the expanse. And also, again, I don't know if this is the time to make this kind of a comment, but what about things like dogs? Things like more and more and more dogs living right behind us. And that's about all right now.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I think definitely the lighting question is a good question. We have had multifamily behind us at different places where we've lived, and yeah, the lighting does have effect of where the light shines. Most people are really, really good at deflecting or changing the angle, and that makes all the difference actually as well. So I'll call Terry up. Terry, Mr. Thiessen, if you could come up and answer the lighting question and dog question, if that will be allowable. Okay.
Thank you very much. I was going to speak about the actual end product on the variance portion of it because I wanted to explain why we arrived at our building style and the whole configuration, and that's very much tied to the variance request. Lighting is a great question, comes up quite a bit. The way we are intending to light the parking lot is to use the building itself, and we end up using soffit lighting to project down. And it doesn't show up on here. You'll see it on the 3D if whoever's in charge of the slide wants to pan over to the 3D. We have actually oversized soffits up on the roof. That's the underside of the roof where your Christmas lights go. And the intention there is to use those overhangs to cascade onto the parking lot. It typically does satisfy the lighting requirement, and it keeps that light pollution kind of contained to the property. And that would be our solution, not to put a big spotlight to shine into your backyard.
Okay.
As far as dogs go, I can't comment on, I guess, how dogs get distributed. Like, people may or may not have dogs in this neighborhood. That's not up for the builder to decide, unfortunately. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so those are, the one question's answered very well, and yeah, the dog question, it's still unknown how many dogs or who would have dogs in this neighborhood. Okay, thank you. Okay. So I'll ask one more time, is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner.
Motion to approve?
Do it second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like this project for multiple reasons. Obviously, location in terms of Main Street makes it a good fit for higher density in that area, and we've seen that happening along Main Street as well. But this plan also takes into account the surroundings. It's only 2 stories, so it won't really change, I don't think, the aesthetic that much of the neighborhood and surrounding 2-story buildings. And the other piece about this, I know this is rezoning, but we often look at the plan before we decide ever we want to rezone something. This is an interesting plan. It's studio apartments, and that is something I'm not sure that we have in our community. And in terms of affordability for particularly, let's say single people or a couple, it's a new model for Steinbach from what I know of. So I think this is a really going to be a really popular place. And I think it makes sense for the area it's in. So yeah, I support rezoning this property.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hiebert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As was mentioned earlier, there's two other properties that have had new builds in the last year. There's a six-family building right across the road from there, plus a 20-unit building that's coming down the street. I think this is a great place, and that end of Main Street seems to have more and more multifamily. And just the design and the look, the appeal of the building itself, I think is quite well done. So I would approve.
Thank you. Anything further, council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Well, council, I too will support the rezoning. I do believe from what I've read in the package, from what I see, it looks like the developer has given some good thought to this. I think this is definitely it's gonna fill a niche market in our community. That affordable entry level, this could be many young people's first place outside of their mom and dad's home. So I think this is definitely a good place to start. I think it's situated on a good spot on our main street. And I think that it's going to be in a good distance from our commercial and retail areas. It's walkable. I think there's a lot of positives that go with this, and looking forward to hearing more as far as variance goes too. But I think at this time, council, when I look at the rezoning, I think there's enough evidence here to approve. Call for the question. All's in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And again, we will go directly into 7B. This is the variance 2025-32, 635 and 641 Main Street. At this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workning, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Application for variance file V-2025-32, also for 635 and 641 Main Street, is an application to seek council approval to provide a total of 45 parking stalls for the proposed development, whereas a total of 59 parking stalls are required pursuant to City of Steinbach Zoning By-Law 2100. Notices as are required by the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. With respect to the application, the proposed development is planning to develop 36 dwelling units on the site. I did mention in the previous zoning bylaw application 2266 of the two other multifamily developments that have been developed in the neighborhood. Both of these other projects provided the required number of on-site parking stalls for the number of units built. The developer did indicate in the application that the proposed units will all be studio apartments, which could potentially reduce the need for on-site parking in relation to what is required under the bylaw. However, the application does not provide evidence to support that position. The requested variance is significant, seeking about a 24% reduction for the parking requirements of private development, and it would be precedent setting if council would approve. Recommendation from administration is that council deny the application for variance.
Thank you, Mr. Workning. The applicant is here today. Do you wish to speak to the variance?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is Mr. Terry Thiessen. Was that 72 Norwood Bay?
72 Norwood Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of council stole my thunder. I was gonna say all those nice things about this project at the variance stage. We were asked by the developer to look at this piece of property and make it work. They wanted to, by all accounts, improve the neighborhood by building new construction on these two properties. We penciled out a couple options. I mean, obviously, in this business, it has to math out and be economically viable, financially successful. And so it became apparent quickly that, smaller one-bedroom units were probably the only way to go. And the developer did not want to build try to build 4 or 5 floors high. We wanted to keep it lower. And to do that, obviously, you go from 3 bedrooms down to 2, down to 1. And we got inspired by some product out in Winnipeg, where it was new product, new studio units that people feel proud of living in. However, trying to get a price point where it's under $1,000 a month to rent. And that felt really attractive to us from just looking at the town. What is there in this town? Rents are increasingly going up. We all know that for various reasons. And to get new product under $1,000, I think the target is around $800. I'm not the developer, but that's what it's sounding like. Would be really neat to have in this community. And the new product, people feel proud of living in it. Again, we're downtown. We're not really downtown, but we're on Main Street, right? And so to go higher density in Main Street just feels natural from a city planning perspective. And so with that in mind, we set out to build a building, and to keep the footprint in the property and all that, we ran into parking obstacles. And we worked really hard with the city, Lacey and some of the other individuals in the city to try to get all the bylaws met. And we were left with a variance for parking. And we sat down as a group and looked at the project objectively. And you're correct, the intention on this project is to utilize studio units throughout. 100% of these units will be studio units. And whoever's in charge of this slide, maybe now's a good time to go to those. I believe I submitted those. And you'll notice studio units will be 1 bedrooms, but more than that, they are actually not sprawling 1 bedrooms. These are really condensed units with a very unique demographic in mind. A single professional, someone who's out on their own, who wants to make it. This isn't supposed to be riffraff. This is supposed to be just something that people can afford and checks off all the requirements. They can actually, get introduced into society and make a living. And what happens with these types of units is you actually can't have families living in here. And so the idea of a roommate with an extra vehicle is logistically impossible. And so if there was ever a case for a project where there'd be a parking variance where we reduce the parking, this felt like the one, where you'd have quite literally 1 occupant per unit. And so what we have is we have 45 stalls, 36 units, that allows for 1.25 stalls per unit. One way of looking at it is 25% visitor parking. And that's how we like to look at it, is you've got 1 unit with 1 stall dedicated for this studio unit, and then 25% visitor parking, which I believe actually quite exceeds the minimum for multifamily. So that's how we want to market this to the public is, look, everybody gets a parking stall. And you know what, there's actually a lot of visitor parking. We're right downtown. And so the idea of keeping a building that wasn't 4 floors high, keeping it low so that the neighbors aren't upset, keeping the roof line low. We don't have 6, 12 pitch ceilings or roof lines. We have low, I think we're under 30 feet on the building as a whole. And so the impact in the neighborhood, I think it's good. It adds value. We're improving the neighborhood by, replacing an older building with a new one. I understand that's maybe part of the rezoning portion of this. But the variance here for parking, we feel like we understand why the city has parking bylaws in place. They're needed. We appreciate it. This application feels like if there was ever a case to set some precedent and perhaps allow this kind of variance, it makes sense here. We're not going to have families of 3, 4 vehicles residing here. The occupant loads just won't allow it. Okay. So that's the perspective where we came from. The ask, I think, is very reasonable, and I'm willing to field questions surrounding this.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Thiessen. I do have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
One being, so this lot is actually a little bit unique. Can you explain, because part of your challenges is there's a no build line in the back.
Yes.
So could you just explain that no build line and how that is impacting your parking lot?
Absolutely. So during the due diligence portion of this project here, we talked to the city about where we could and couldn't build. I wouldn't mind the city's perspective on it, but I believe there's a no-build line of 15 feet along the north of both of the properties, and that the city has reserved for what I believe to be a public sidewalk in the future. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But that in turn has actually compromised how much parking we can place on this property. So if that wasn't there, we believe we could have satisfied, or at least gotten much closer to satisfying the parking. We could have configured it a bit different, but that ended up limiting how much parking we could actually do on the project itself. And so we wanted to keep that in mind, respect what the city wanted to do with these lots, and build within that. We felt like the variance on parking was a lesser ask.
Now, my second question is, the model that you looked at where you found this similar building, what were the parking needs, or what was the parking requirements of that building as well?
So that building was not in Steinbach, that was in Winnipeg. The rules are much different. That was in, I forget which neighborhood, I would believe more in the Transcona area. There, the applicant was able to get reduced parking as well. I don't know what percentage. I haven't done my homework on what percent they were able to reduce it. And there, they had a similar situation. It was one stall per unit, but I'm not familiar with how much extra visitor parking they had on that project. And they were able to use street parking to help with some of that needs as well.
Okay, thank you. There might be a daytime challenge, because during the day, there's between, I think, 8 and 5, it's 2-hour parking on Main Street there. So that might be, I don't know if that's a challenge or not. But anyways, that just I thought I would bring that forward as well. But Councillor, any questions? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just in terms of looking at the raw numbers, you've got 36 proposed units and 45 stalls is what you're proposing. So the first question, then there's a follow-up. Obviously, I think you're correct that you're not going to have families of 3, 4, or 5 in one-bedroom suites here. But is it reasonable that there could be some couples in these apartments?
If you'd like to go to the slide where the two unit types are, that would probably help illustrate my next point. That's like a single cot. The dimensions on that are 16 feet wide on the unit as a whole. We're talking hide-a-bed type sizes here. And so not only would I feel like that would be a stretch, maybe someone would try. I don't know how, I mean, now we're talking about speculation, but how long can 2 people live in that small of a space? I understand it's kind of funny in a place we're not supposed to be. However, it is somewhat true in that that's a very small cot sized in there. And to fit actually a king-size bed would, my master bedroom is 16 feet wide. The entire unit is 16 feet wide.
I guess a fair point. I mean, obviously, we're not like large cities, but obviously in larger cities, it's very common for couples to be in places this size. I guess my follow-up is that you're kind of going on the assumption that you're virtually certain that there'll be only one person and then one car and then the rest is just for visitor parking. But if you had, let's say, just 1/3 of these apartments, you end up with couples, and if a majority of those have 2 vehicles, which is very common, then wouldn't parking be used up pretty quickly without any accommodation or visitor parking? Like, are you that certain that it's only single people that would be in here?
It's tough to tell on the end user. I know that speaking on behalf of the developer, they are interested in the lease agreements themselves. So for record, these would be for rent. The lease agreements themselves could speak to keeping it to 1 occupant allowed there. You can do that in a lease side. If that was required to make this work, they would consider that. I just can't necessarily speak to that. I wasn't prepared for this question today. It's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. If it just seems odd that the possibility of it could be restricted to 1 person, but there could be dogs. I mean, in terms of like, what are the restrictions likely to be here? Like, it really sounds like you're targeting it towards single people, but there could be couples here. Is sort of what I'm hearing.
Well, I appreciate I think your comment was what is like the likely plan here? I'm much more comfortable answering that.
Sure.
'Cause I do know what the plan is. And I felt like your first question was like enforcement, or that's more like what could they enforce for 1 versus 2? The plan is absolutely to get single occupants into these spaces. It's going to be marketed as such. I believe your question will be related to if the vacancy is high, will they start compromising on who they let in? It's probably where the question stems from. Correct?
I'm not really thinking in terms of enforcement. I'm just thinking in terms of, because we wouldn't normally enforce how many people you have in an apartment. That's not usually, I'm just simply asking, I'm just a little surprised that you're that certain that it's going to be only single people. That's the only reason that I'm asking.
It's a great question. It does feel like that's what the developer believes in is going to work. And they have their own management team that's, saying, yes, that's the way to do this. Looking at the demographic, looking at the product out there in town, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of new studio type product out there. And so it feels like a niche that is, build it, they will come. And risk is the name of the development scheme. So they do have to look at the entire market. There is risk in what they do. They make the best educated guess they can, and then they go get funded for it and go for it. And the ones that fail, fail, and the ones that do well, do well. And this group seems to do well. They've been doing well for about 12 years. So.
Okay.
Councillor Penner, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Zwagstra covered most of it, but just for to follow up with a little more detail, approximately how many square feet is each of these, just to kind of look at like a couple realistically?
Yeah, my other graphic had the square feet on there. It's 16 wide. I believe we were talking around 400 or 500 square feet. It was under 500 square feet.
Under 500?
It was under 500 square feet. If it had a 3 in front, I wouldn't be surprised. Like 389 or 49, somewhere's in there is where my math was.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further?
Question for administration. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any way that the city, through the development agreement, can limit the amount of vehicles per unit on a build like this? Can we do that through a development agreement?
Well, the primary vehicle to do that is the zoning bylaw, which it just limits parking stalls, it doesn't limit vehicles. And or I should say, it sets the required number of parking stalls that are required for a development based on the number of dwellings. It would be difficult to limit the number of vehicles because that would mean the city would need to enforce, and that is not something the city does on private property.
The enforcement issue is always the case. And through you, a question for Mr. Thiessen. Mr. Thiessen, is there any way that you can put one vehicle only per rental unit, that there's no others allowed? And my background on this is I've been a proponent of eliminating all parking on the 52 highway right through to the fire hall because of increased traffic, and it's 60 kilometers an hour there. For us to have parking there, I don't think is appropriate, although I lost that vote on council. But I still think that down the road that we're going to eliminate parking so we can't have people parking on the street on an ongoing basis. So is there any way through when you rent it that it's part of the lease agreement that they're only allowed one vehicle?
There's a lot of options for it. There's actually 2 options. Probably the best way to enforce, I think the heart of this would be, I guess parking is an issue, and also I did like your question on how can you make sure there's only one occupant per unit. Through the insurance perspective, it's a great perspective for the landlord to tell the property management team, you must only allow one occupant per unit. And to pack 6 occupants into a space designed for one could pose some sort of insurance hazard, whether it's fire hazard or something. So it's a very good vehicle or mechanism to keep the occupants to 1 unit per. It is something absolutely that we've talked about. At this stage, it felt premature. We wanted to first get the project through. It is for sure something that's been looked at is almost limiting the occupants per unit into the lease, coming at it from an insurance perspective. Your question was parking related. There's more options with parking. With a lease, you can do it a couple different ways. You can say you can rent this space and it does not come with parking at all. You have to pay extra for parking, first come, first serve. That is legally allowed. You can do that, and that would ensure only X amount of vehicles are on there. Now, one unit can maybe rent 3, and we could build some house rules to prevent that. So there's in-house policy we can create. I feel like this council is looking more at what are like enforceable legal ways to do it. Insurance is a great way to limit one occupant per unit, and creating parking rules within the lease is a very good way to ensure that one unit gets one stall, you don't get 2 stalls. And it can be enforced through the lease, should the developer choose to do so.
Thank you.
I would like to comment, the developer would have no motive to have it excessively parking everywhere. They would, how do I say this? They want it to be like, not a zoo. If it's chaos, the property manager has a hassle. They want it nice and organized and structured, and so they're motivated to not make it a mess with parking. It just becomes more work for them.
One more question. On the parking lot, in the second row, there's a 40-foot gap. Is that for the garbage pickup?
I'd love to waive that and add more stalls there. That is correct. That is for garbage pickup. There's some radiuses that the service vehicles have to keep for getting in and out of the property. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you got to enter into the parking lot moving forward. You can't back onto a public street if you're the service vehicle. And because of that, they have to be able to make the U-turn on the property itself, which burned up some stalls. Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be clear, we're talking about a 2-story facility, because one of our points here says 3-story, but you're clear that it's 2. You have not considered going to 3 stories, and then obviously you wouldn't need that same level of square footage, and you'd have more parking available.
Correct. That was considered. The developing group felt like keeping the overall building height lower was more better, for better or worse, than this, how do I say it? To go up has its own issues. Price sometimes costs more. And so they felt like trying to keep that rent below $1,000 a month was attractive, especially for a studio unit. So if you're going to go for the 1-bedroom solution, you're cutting out a whole demographic that has a child or roommates. You're limiting it. So you have to make it economically viable, and the rent has to be attractive. So in the end, all things considered, this felt like the least amount of variances and ask and risk involved. Felt like the easiest path to success, keeping the neighbors happy.
And 2 stories keeps the roof height lower too for the neighborhood. Fits in better.
Correct, yeah.
Anything further of council? Go ahead, Councillor Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. My son and his wife rented a suite like this in Winnipeg when they first got married, and they had no parking, none available. They had to find a parking spot a couple of blocks from where they lived. I think if you would limit it to 1 parking spot per suite, we could probably eliminate some of the issues.
Now, my assumption is it is 1 stall per suite. Like, how do I say this? That is the default, how these leases are written. What I struggle answering in these rooms is enforcement and all that. So it's a great question. How do you enforce it? And a council, I believe, doesn't have much of a mechanism to enforce how many parking stalls a tenant has. And so the burden does go on to the landlord to police his property. The plan absolutely is to have one parking stall per unit, 25% visitor. Now that I'm standing here, one way to maybe enforce this would be to approve this variance under the condition that 25% of these stalls remain visitor at all time, which I believe is something this council could enforce, thereby putting the landlord almost, ensuring your question there keeps it, in bounds. And we would be okay with that as a developer if the city said approved on the condition that all of these become visitor stalls.
Question for Mr. Workney. Is that a possibility? Can council maintain that the extra 25% parking spots would remain for visitors only?
Before I answer that, and what would council like to do if it didn't?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Enforcement.
It's a very difficult,
It's hard to
it's a very difficult,
lease that one.
question, because the city enforces land use policy through its zoning bylaw. And as long as developers develop the required number of parking stalls for the use that's anticipated, subject to whatever approvals council proceeds with, those decisions are left up to property owners to deal with, because that's an operational and a business decision.
Yeah, I think that's the thing better dealt with through your release. Yes, go ahead.
Question for administration through you. So the city's parking is based on unit, is that correct?
Correct.
So what we're requiring here, or whatever our bylaws would require here, is the same as if it was, these are two-bedroom apartments, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that doesn't, there is a difference. Like, I understand it's by unit, but at the same time, I think we know that wouldn't necessarily have the same demands on parking, a two-bedroom unit or three-bedroom unit versus a studio suite. Presumably, some of them might not even have a vehicle at all. It's very difficult to know, and I think sometimes with these things, we have to go with the spirit of what we want for parking. Even in terms of setting precedent, we see these things on a case-by-case basis. So, yeah, maybe there's precedent, but they have to come through council. Maybe I should save my comments for after the motion's made. Having said that, it's just, I think there are differences between parking needs of two or three bedroom units versus a studio, and the requirements are the same. So there should be a little bit of leeway, I would suspect.
Okay, go ahead.
That actually did bring to mind a point I was intending to make and I'd forgotten to make. If this was a building where there was a mixture of studio units, two-bedroom units, and three-bedroom units, I believe it'd be a much bigger ask. It'd be much harder for you guys to approve it because you have just a spread of different unit types. Because 100% of these units are studio units, every single one. I believe it's a much easier ask to approve. To your point there, if it was 2 and 3 bedroom units, then yes, there's a likelihood of perhaps some units having 2 or 3 vehicles, but here, with all the units being studios, it feels like a very reasonable conclusion that, the needs for vehicles is reduced.
Okay. Anything further of council? Thank you very much. Good discussion. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Is there anyone here with comments, questions? Okay.
Yeah, Norm Solnick, 630 Wilson Street.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, hey, I'm not much of a public speaker, so. Well, I guess my greatest concern was the size and the orientation of a building that would come directly across from me. And looking at this plan, the 2-story, the flat roof, the way the parking lot is, it's way better than I had anticipated it could be, I'm looking at the winter sun, all this kind of stuff, and I'm thinking like, what's going to be there? And I'm pleased with this design.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else with comments, questions, or objections to this file? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone else, or anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Stevens. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think I made most of my comments when probably wasn't the correct time, but I will go again here. I understand that this is a challenging situation from the city administration side because our bylaws say parking goes per unit. But when it comes to multifamily, particularly with Steinbach growing, with the cost of living being what it is, we have to be able to adapt and pivot to what the demand is, what people need. And again, I think we understand what the spirit of the parking bylaw is, and in general, we do try and enforce it. But this is a situation where every unit is under 500 square feet. There may be a couple in them, potentially, but that doesn't even necessarily mean they'll have two vehicles. There may be a single person with no vehicle. I think this is a situation where this is a new kind of model for Steinbach from what I've observed. And I think we should give it a chance and see how this works out, because I think this hits a niche that is unserved. Everybody gets a parking spot. For example, if I'm going to move into this place and I get one parking spot and I have 2 or 3 vehicles, I'm not going to rent here because there's not a place for my vehicle. So I think to a certain degree, the fact that there is just one stall per unit, and if there's unavailable street parking as well in front, like you were saying, maybe there's parking restrictions there, I'm not going to rent that unit. So to a certain degree, the market and what's available will take care of some of that piece as well. But whatever the case, I think this is a great unit for our community, something we need, and I support the variance based on all that, what we've heard here tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Penner's comments. I was a big proponent of moving to 1.5 stalls per unit quite a number of years ago when we talked about parking. Parking has always been a concern around multifamily. Anywhere you have multifamily in Steinbach, we've got a concern with parking because the street gets overloaded frequently because there's 2 or 3 cars per unit. I see this, as Councillor Penner stated, I see this as a separate topic and a different type of opportunity. I think too that potentially there will only be 1 vehicle per unit. We have to trust that the owner and the person doing the leasing, they have that in their rules and their bylaws, that there's only 1 vehicle per unit. I would hope that would continue to happen, although the city doesn't have control, and neither does the city want that enforcement or that to take that on. I like this plan. I like the location. I like the so many things about this, and it is unique project that Steinbach doesn't have at this point, and this is something that's been needed. We've heard from, I have heard from many different people that there's not enough. Well, they always say 1 bedroom, but this is smaller than that. This is a studio, and I think would work here, and I think there's an opportunity to here as well. So I will vote in favor of the motion.
Go ahead, Councillor Swing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will say that on the whole, I think this is a good project. I think the studio apartments are a positive addition to the city. Nevertheless, I will vote against the variance, and not because I don't think it's a good project, but I have not been convinced on the need to make an exception to our parking requirement. I just want to point out a couple things here. First of all, I know as a council we have tried to sort of show flexibility in regards to parking when we're talking about commercial, particularly in the downtown area. We've shown some considerable flexibility there because that's a different type of parking. When we're talking about commercial, we're talking about customers, we're talking about very different types of requirements where there are some places that need more parking than others, and so especially when you get to Main Street in the downtown, there's a certain amount of flexibility that is needed. However, residences are different. When we're talking about multifamily, There isn't that much variation. In Steinbach, the vast majority of people who have cars, so that is just simply how most people get around, including people who live on Main Street. And so even when you go to small studio apartments, so even if I have not heard anyone here make the case that at least the vast majority will have at least one vehicle. Certainly, I think that is a reasonable assumption. And so you just do the math that you have 36 units, and if the vast majority have one vehicle, you've only got like 9 or 10 extra parking stalls. That's it. That's the raw number. You have just a few that have 2 people in them. And yes, I don't think that would be the majority. It might be a relatively small number. But it is not that rare for at least someone early in their marriage or couple time or whatever that where you would start out in a small studio apartment. And yes, it's possible you might have 2 vehicles because you both have jobs that require you to go to separate places. Well, there you go. You've got some extra vehicles, and that's not even talking about visitor parking. I have not seen any evidence that there were fewer visitors that would come here than to any other location. The reason we have parking requirements is we want to make sure that there's enough parking at a residence so that way people aren't forced to park on the street and cause all sorts of issues there. And in this section here, we do have significant limits to on-street parking along Main Street, that during daytime hours, you're limited to 2-hour parking. So if we're wrong in terms of the assumptions here, if it turns out, oh, you know, there's actually some extra vehicles that we didn't anticipate, there's no margin for error here. It's not like that there's extra, you know, parking around that is just easily available. There's not. It causes some issues there. And there are other options. I mean, I realize that you always want to maximize, you know, efficiency in the space and all that, but there's at least 2 alternatives that no one is really talking about here. You could either change the height or you could slightly reduce the number of units. Those are both options you could do, and that every other development has to do in order to meet parking requirements. And as far as the argument that, well, it's a precedent, but it's not that big a precedent, well, it sounds like that if we pass this here, we're setting an explicit precedent that if it's studio apartments, automatically, then it's 1.25 stalls per unit. And if that's really the direction we're going, then that maybe should have come up when we were just doing our zoning bylaw review. No one brought that up as far as that, hey, you know, we should actually change the zoning bylaw to reflect that if we're going to have studio apartments, it should be 1.25 parking stalls. And so I like the project. I want it to go ahead, but I just think that it would be better for it to be designed in such a way that it actually fits the parking requirements. So I will vote against the variance.
Anything further of council? Go ahead, Councillor Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Schweigster. That this is a good presentation, and that it's a hard decision for me, because my decisions on variances are really easy to make. But in this case, the precedent we're setting here is, in my opinion, is focused just on a dollar value. If we went on one more floor, parking wouldn't be an issue. So from the developer point of view, I think that is something that should have been looked at more seriously. To have a 24% reduction in parking, and with, like has been said, with the street parking with the 2-hour limit. But the ruling we make today is a ruling for the rest of life. And so therefore, I stand on my variance. This is too much of a variance for me to go along with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Councillor Penner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My decision and how I came to it wasn't exactly easy on this one. I went around on a couple different paths and thinking about, okay, well, when I was 20 years old, what would I have lived in? What 20-year-old couples do I know, and trying to go into their experience. And the challenge that we run into when we're on city council is we have to look not necessarily at the intent, but what the consequences might be with a decision. So we have to weigh both of those, that while we want to believe in the best intentions of development going forward, we also have to weigh out the consequences of what those consequences might be. And Councillor Zweigster said that one of the consequences might be that studio apartments might only need 1.25 stalls. We don't know what the consequences are actually going to be with regards to studio apartments, because this is a unique situation. Having said that, I feel that there was enough discussion around this and enough, although anecdotal evidence brought forth that it would be very, very challenging for more than one individual to live in one of these apartments at a time. Then reducing it to, by default, only having one vehicle per studio. So I will vote in favor of the variance. I would very strongly, although the city can enforce it, recommend that the developer, the individual that owns it, show a sign of good faith and goodwill towards the community, though, and make sure that there is only one vehicle per suite on there so that there is room for visitors. Obviously, we can't enforce it, but I would strongly recommend for the sake of the community and those properties surrounding it, to not clutter the street to do that.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Yeah, I just would have a couple of comments. Regarding Councillor Swagster's comment about we should have brought this up when we just did the zoning bylaw. I didn't know this was coming forward at that time. We can't possibly think of every potential scenario that's going to come up and then in advance make the bylaw for that. So I don't know that that is a reason to not approve this, because we're going to continue to get new scenarios. And this ruling is not necessarily a ruling for the rest of life. But if it works out, maybe it will, and the next time we can change the bylaw accordingly. One of the challenges, again, we're constantly hearing is that there needs to be affordable housing. It's not going to, if we're trying to make these affordable, studio apartments, if we're trying to make the developers trying to make them affordable, that's better. There's going to, chances are, in order to do that, we do need to reduce things like parking, for example, requiring what we do for, again, bigger units for this will likely make this unaffordable and defeat exactly what we're trying to accomplish. So that's another thing I would say. I realize this is a significant variance. Having said that this apartment, this unit is significantly different as well as what we've seen before. So I would like to see what happens with this. I hope it goes well, because I can see more of this happening in our community in the future.
Thank you very much. Well, council, primarily when we look at variances, and variances are on a lot, there's usually a reason for that, and it's either a regular shaped lot or there's some challenges with the lot. And in this case, there were challenges mentioned by the representative of the developer, is the no build line, and that is 15 feet that we are keeping for future infrastructure, for whether that is going to be a walkway or not. It's not, doesn't matter, but we're holding that land back. So that creates undue stress on how many lots can, or how many parking spots can be built. I do believe the intent of the developer is to have one person, or one occupant per house or unit, and one parking stall per unit as well. I do agree with Councillor Penner's comments. If you need more, there are different apartments in our community for you, right? This is a unique, first one-off niche style of building. I think it would come with a unique use of parking. Parking, like the bylaws are made for the mass, and variances are for the one-off, and I believe this is a one-off. And like I say, we usually reserve variances for lots that create a challenge, and I think this 15-foot no build line, I think that does create a bit of a challenge for their parking and for their usable space. So for that reason, like I'd like to see this go ahead. I'd like to give this a chance and see what this can do for our community, because I do believe this type of affordable entry-level home housing is something we need. Yes, Mr. Orkney.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if you are finished, there was just one point I'd like to make regarding the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
If the resolution that's on the floor right now is a motion to approve, recommendation is that it be, or that there be an addition that it's also subject to third reading of zoning bylaw 2266. so that the variance would be approved in connection with the rezoning.
Okay. Okay, and that will be coming back to council?
Bylaw 2266, yes. Once all the further details related to that zoning, it would come back to council for third reading at a later date.
Okay. Councilor Penner, are you okay with that condition, that it ties to the
Yes.
third reading of 2226? Okay, perfect, yes. I was basically done, Mr. Rooney, so it's no problem. So, but I will support the motion because I do believe that this new style, this kind of stuff, let's give it a chance. Let's see what happens. I do believe this is needed in our community, and I hear time and time again, the cost of starting out is so great. And if this can help people, have young people, professional people start out and get their feet wet and get them into home ownership one day, this is the way to go. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, council, we will move on to 9A. This is reports and recommendations of city manager. This is referring to residential recycling services, Bristal hauling agreement renewal. It's on page 29. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city, about 3 years ago, entered into a residential recycling services agreement with Bristal Hauling. That former agreement is fast coming to its expiry date. The city has negotiated with Bristal Hauling for an extension. The agreement that you see in the package is that extension. The agreement is proposed to be extended for 3 years to expire November 30th, 2028, with the cost of services that are detailed within there. And essentially, it's both the curbside residential and also multifamily container pickups in and throughout Steinbach. Recommendation for council is to approve and ratify this agreement for renewal.
Okay. Council, how would you like to proceed? Looking for ratification? Councilor Swagstra?
Motion to approve.
Second by Councilor Penner. Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion to extend the agreement with Bristol Hauling for recycling for another 3 years. I think that we've been satisfied with the service that's been provided by Bristol Hauling. They certainly, made themselves available after the arrangements we had with the previous organization had ended, and I think that considering that staff are recommending that we move ahead, I am satisfied that this is the appropriate path forward.
Thank you. Anything further?
Nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further of council? Closing. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Move on to number 10, administration, accounts payable, back of the book. We've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Hiebert.
No comments.
Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We've got 10B. This is rezoning. This is bylaw 2268, Parkhill Phase 2C. This is our first reading. It's on page 39. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rezoning bylaw 2268 for the extension of Rosebrook Trail and Pacific Bay is being applied for, and the owner are both Sinceris Parkhill GP PD. Purpose of bylaw 2268 is to rezone the subject properties from RSF residential single family zone to RLD residential low density zone, and also RMD residential medium density zone. This is part of a multi-phase development. This will be, I believe, the fourth phase that has occurred over the last number of years. Recommendation from administration is that council give this bylaw first reading so that a public hearing may be scheduled later this fall.
Thank you, Mr. Worthing. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilor Pinner?
Motion to approve?
second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This isn't unheard of or uncommon when we're coming to multiple phases on a development. The development they build, the first phase goes up usually as they intend, and then as subsequent developments come in, they judge the supply and demand and the draw of that particular neighborhood. So this is first reading and with regards to moving and rezoning to single-family, low-density, medium-density, and we'll be looking forward to the public hearing and seeing what the public has to say.
Thank you very much. Anything further, Councillor Penner? Anything further, Council? Nothing in closing?
Nothing further.
Call for the question. All's in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We've got 10C, business licenses on page 50. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert.
No comments.
Call for the question. All's in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We've got 10D. This is the building permits on page 51. Looks like we had a good month again, Council. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Swagstra,
Motion to approve.
second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you'd noted, we're off to a very good, the year is continuing very well. In October, we had just over $8.8 million in building permits, and that's almost evenly split between residential and then commercial/industrial and such, and so that's strong in both departments. And to note that we are at, as of the end of October, just over $104 million in building permits. Two-thirds of that residential and one-third of that commercial/industrial. And so we seem to be experiencing year after year of strong growth in Steinbach in all different areas and in frankly all different parts of the city, and that's good to see.
Nothing further.
Anything further, Council? Anything closed?
Nope.
Yeah, Council, it has been a great month again, and just a couple of highlights. If you look at the year-to-date dwelling units, we have 331. Last year, we had 343, and that was a record year. And we are 12 away. So we're headed for another record year. As Councilor Swagstra said, the year-to-date was 104.2 million. Last year, we ended off at 104.9 million. We have $700,000, and we beat that as well. Another record year. Like, we are having this is unprecedented growth that we are growing year after year, and it's just so exciting. Doesn't look like it's slowing down. So, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have 10E, the Board of Revision. We're looking for a resolution for the decisions that were made on the day of the Board of Resolution. So, Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Penner.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Any comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think it's great that the Board of Revision met on October 22nd to do the work and to review the tax rolls and those that objected. And this is where their decision are. I think we put those people in place. We approved of them doing that on behalf of council. So I think we should approve the decisions that they've made.
Anything further? Anything further of council? Anything closing?
No, sir.
Yeah. Well, Council, our Board of Revision did a great job, and they went through it all, read through it all, and got to a good consensus. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we've got 10F. This is the 2026 City of Steinbach Emergency Plan Amendments. Amendment by resolution. Mr. Workteen, is there anything for administration to add, or do we just make a resolution to accept?
It's just a resolution to accept their minor changes that are being changed or being made for 2026.
Okay, thank you very much. We're looking for a resolution to accept. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. No,
Most of it is updated contact information. If the red binder's coming down, we better have the right contact information in it, so.
Anything further?
Exactly what I was going to say. Emergency plans need to be kept up to date to be effective in an emergency, and I appreciate the people that are doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We've come down to council question period. Are there any questions of council? We've got 12A, we've got the correspondence petitions, Stars Air Ambulance Foundation, continued support, and a thank you. Councilor, would you like to proceed? Take his information at this time? Okay. And we've got the one item of other business. This is the 13A, the silo silica, and our response. Mr. Worthing, could you please introduce this file?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a formal report prepared for council. Since the last council meeting where this item was brought up, administration has been reviewing the Environmental Act license application by CO Silica and the advice that there is a current commenting period that any interested parties may provide comments. While administration still is reviewing the application, what we have read so far and based on the city's understanding of the previous application by CO Silica, administration is recommending that the city submit comments to the application process by the December 1st deadline, and would just like that matter ratified by council.
Okay, council, so we're looking to ratify by motion, giving our administration direction to provide comment. So I encourage us to do so. This is kind of how it started out the last time this came through. So, Councillor Pinner, I saw your hand before. Did you have a question, or you?
No, I want to make a motion.
Second by Councillor Siemens. Okay, go ahead.
While I understand that mining for minerals is important, I would argue that water is the most important resource that we have, and I think it is imperative that every possible concern, avenue to examine is addressed with this. I know this is just the commenting period, but looking ahead to when the objection period starts, I would also encourage council that we give that some serious consideration. We do not want to mess around with our water aquifers. So this is imperative that we take this seriously and do what we can to make sure we protect our water.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor?
Just to echo exactly those comments, aquifer that the city draws from is that aquifer that is being affected. While it is downstream from us, it could potentially have devastating effect on our communities. We don't know that, and it is good. We need to provide commentary and reaction, and and then need to take the further steps. Last time we did, this was the process. The city provided commentary, and then after the fact, when they were seeking objections, then they also gathered support of local municipalities to do that. But this is the first step, as indicated. I agree, we need to make that first step.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Okay. As council, I do think it's very important. It's not just Steinbach that takes the water out of this aquifer. There's probably about, I'm believing, about around 12 municipalities that also use this aquifer. So this doesn't just impact Steinbach. This could impact the entire region. I am a proponent of using our resources, selling our resources, and this is a good thing, but our water is more important. So I think we need to comment. We need to tread very carefully and cautiously through this, and we need to land in the right spot. Call for the question. All's in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Looking for a motion to adjourn? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. Call for the question, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Next, regular council meeting, Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025.